The national security law has obviously affected the democracy movement in Hong Kong. What has been the change that's happened?
Well, I think it's forced the pro-democracy movement to change its ways of conducting itself, both domestically in Hong Kong and in overseas as well. So, firstly, there are two phenomena that we're seeing now. The first one being there's a large number of exiled activists, and along that, even families and people that aren't so political themselves. We're talking mothers and fathers, children and kids. They are all moving overseas, and so what we get now here is that the majority opinion, the majority of Hong Kong, or where the opinion lies, is now overseas and not domestically in Hong Kong. That means two things to me. The first thing is that elections in Hong Kong will no longer mean anything. Before in the past 2 years of our pro-democratic movement, we've seen attempts to take over the Legislative Council by getting loads of pro-democracy legislators in. The national security law proved that that path wouldn't work. And then for district councils as well, we're now seeing possibilities of these district councillors that are pro-democracy being cleared out by the Chinese state. And we're also seeing mandatory feds, as you have covered on your show before. China is now demanding that Hong Kong politicians in general be patriotic patriotic and loyal to the Chinese Communist Party before they can take up their roles. So with that and the elections no longer being a good reflection of the majority will of the Hong Kong people, it is now more important than ever that those that are exiled, the families that have gone overseas, to organize ourselves again. And we're going in my personal view, we're going a path very similar to the Tibetans and to the Uyghurs as well of the world. In that we have now lost our home base, our homeland, and now we have to reorganize in our new homes outside of home.
So the national security law wasn't just a way to stop the protest. It seems like it was a way for the Communist Party to force everyone who was in Hong Kong that had pro-democracy or pro-independence leanings, they all have to leave Hong Kong now, essentially, meaning the only ones left are people who will toe the party line.
Well, the Communist Party and the Hong Kong government has never been lenient on the views of independence and self-determination. Even before, right after 2014, when the Hong Kong National Party was founded and the localist movement in Hong Kong first started, that is more pro-independence leaning, they have never been able to rest, and the government has always been, public opinion has always been quite harsh on them. So national security law just sets it in stone that you can't have that sort of thought in Hong Kong. But I feel like the atmosphere and the environment has always been quite hostile to it. The only good thing, though, I feel is, and this might sound psychopathic to say this, but if anything, the national security law proves to the Hong Kong people that there can be no centrist way of dealing with the Chinese Communist Party. There can be no median way where we can just coexist with the party and try to toe their line and try to play by their box. I mean, if anything, the past 20-some years have proved that that doesn't work. And national security law just tells us that it won't work. And not before and not again, and never will. And it brings to the public, the Hong Kong public, that independence or some sort of self-determination, to put it into better terms, I feel, the ability of the Hong Kong people to be able to reflect themselves in a democratic election or in some sort of sovereign political entity aside from Chinese Communist Party. That is the only way forward, I feel.
Yeah, I remember when we were in Hong Kong for the Umbrella Movement in 2014. At the time, the idea of Hong Kong independence was sort of seen as something kind of on the extreme side of things. Most people just were protesting for democracy, things the Communist Party had actually promised to the people of Hong Kong. But it seems like at this point, even those reasonable demands no longer will work. The Communist Party has forced the people of Hong Kong into an extreme position.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. That actually is a huge concern of mine. Obviously, I wasn't born in time for the handover and on the transition of sovereignty. I was born in 2000. I'm now 20. So I missed a lot of major historical events. But for the longest time in Hong Kong, the public consensus was that at least around 2014, around myself, my close circle of friends and family, was that nobody liked the Chinese Communist Party, even for the blue ribbons or pro-establishment supporters in Hong Kong right now. Even back then, I think it's pretty safe to say that nobody ever liked the idea of Hong Kong being fully a part of the Chinese Communist Party. But it's never put into words and it's never put into action. And after that, very conveniently, the pan-democratic camp in Hong Kong offered an easy solution, right? So vote for the pan-democrats, vote for these sort of certain parties that will reflect your voices in Parliament and in the Legislative Council, and your problem will be solved, and we will push us towards a path towards democracy. Well, that is a very nice promise, and it's a promise given to us for 20 years, and nothing has ever come of it. And I feel the rhetoric that we are working towards human rights and freedom in the way that we don't really know how we're going to achieve it. There's a very lacking debate and lacking discussion before 2014 and before this sort of political rhetoric is brought up to the public minds. So I feel the Hong Kong masses were very pacified by institutionalized politics back then after the handover. Certainly, during the umbrella movement, like you said, Hong Kong independence was seen as more radical, and it's not very widely accepted. If anything, the results, the things that the Chinese Communist Party has done to us, have showed us that the reason is quite simple. You cannot trust a treaty with China or the Chinese Communist Party. You cannot trust a treaty with the Chinese Communist Party. And under that, no matter how many basic laws or how many respects of sovereignty they write up to us, none of that is going to matter, because at the end of the day, we lack the power of enforcement, right? Britain hasn't done anything. The UK hasn't done anything aside from the BNO visas and letting some of the BNO visa holders back into the UK. Well, aside from that, they haven't actually held China to their word, I feel. And that lack of enforcement is the underlying problem with all sorts of treaties that dealt with China. The stuff back then doesn't work now yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard for people to learn their lesson. I remember last year I was talking with this is before the Hong Kong national security law. I was talking with a Tibetan activist in New York, and he was saying, back in 1959, Tibet, had signed, before 1959, Tibet had signed the 11-point agreement with the Communist Party to allow Tibet to be part of China, but it would still have autonomy, which is why it's called the, Tibet Autonomous Region. And within a few years, the Communist Party completely broke that agreement. But essentially, that was the same type of agreement as the one that the Communist Party had with Great Britain over Hong Kong. And so he's like what you should have done is seen what's happened in Tibet. And within a few years, the Dalai Lama had to flee, right? And he's like, that's probably going to happen to Hong Kong. And at the time, because this was January 2020, it wasn't fully clear just how bad things were going to go. But it turned out, of course, the lesson from Tibet from, half a century earlier was unfortunately the lesson that had to be learned once again.